Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Buenos días, damas y caballeros. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sung-Hoon Kim, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the International Civil Aviation Organization's 40th Assembly SkyTalks. Over a 2-week period, we have 68 presentations for you, ranging from all different types of subjects. So please check out the ICAO channel on YouTube for more information. Following our presentation, I would welcome you to step forward and ask questions to our presenter. We continue today is day 6, session number 3. And we will be talking about how big data helps with border security and border management. Please welcome Juan Lamosa, Chief of Aviation Security Audit Section, to bring more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to be talking about promoting sustainable aviation security through continuous monitoring. I'd like to welcome everybody to this presentation. My name is Juan Lamosa. I am the Chief of the Aviation Security Audit Section, and I'm responsible for the Universal Security Audit Programme, continuous monitoring approach. So we're going to explain to you how we work and what we do to help states ensure sustainable security, aviation security. Our main objective is to promote global aviation security through continuous auditing and monitoring. What does that mean? We want to promote aviation security. We want to help you improve. So we're going to give you lots of recommendations. But overall, we also have to measure so that we can quantify and help understand what the situation is. What we do is we determine the level of effective implementation of the critical elements in an aviation security oversight system, which I'm going to explain to you shortly. That measures the sustainability of the system. And we also provide an indication of the implementation of the standards. So we're going to tell you how well you are meeting the ICAO Annex 17 and Annex 9 standards that we audit. So how does the audit program work? And how is it a continuous process? It's got 5 elements that we look at. When we look at, first, how do we select states? What information do we use? So we have to determine the scope. We have to monitor information in order to determine what the information is that we can use to analyze and to make decisions. So we prioritize states based on a risk model. The risk model is based on threat information, which is derived from the United Nations Department of Safety and Security, UNDSS, information that we get from the internet. And we combine that with other indicators to understand what is the situation in the state. That includes previous audit results, that includes the flight volumes, that includes potential significant security concerns, and a series of other information. Based on that information, and when the last audit was, we determine what states need to be audited. Once we've determined that, we then look at the same information to determine what type of activity we need to do. The types of activities can range from document-based audits, from on-site audits focused on the oversight capacity of the state, on-site audits focused on compliance, and other types of activities, including follow-up activities, or even recommending aviation security assistance for states that need assistance. Once we determine the type of activity that we need to conduct, we prepare our schedule, we conduct the activity, we provide the state with a report. That report is first left with the state in draft form at the end of the audit and finalized over the 60 days following the audit so that it's gone through a quality control process, and we give recommendations that are prioritized from low priority, medium priority, and high priority, or even very high priority, to help guide the state on what areas need to be focused on first. Based on that report, that state is going to give us a corrective action plan, and from that corrective action plan, we're going to provide feedback to the state. Sorry, the slide's not working correctly anymore. We're going to provide feedback to the state and the state is going to provide us additional information as to the progress in implementing their corrective action plans. As the state gives us feedback on the progress of the corrective action plan, we're going to feed that information back into our analysis in order to determine what is the next step for that state. And this cycle goes on, and we collect information at any point in the year, whether it's received from the state directly or from one of our regional offices, primarily as our conduits for information. Now, we give indicators. We just talked about it briefly. We talk about sustainability indicator. We're looking at how sustainable is the system of a state. And I talked about the critical elements of an aviation security oversight system. So these 8 critical elements, which we'll see in a second, are the components of an oversight system that ensure that you have a sustainable system. It doesn't mean that you're going to operationally be doing great on a given day, but it does mean that your system is set up to be sustainable, and that if something goes wrong, you're going to be able to detect that it went wrong. The compliance indicator, an indicator that is going to be changing from what we previously showed before, and it will be modified following the assembly that is just finishing, is an indicator of the compliance with standards. So I'm going to show you that indicator as well to see what it looks like and what it means, and explain to you how to interpret what you're looking at, because it's going to help you understand what the audit results mean and how you can use this to improve your system, because that's what we're trying to do, is to help you improve your system. So when we look at the oversight indicator, the oversight indicator is about looking at 8 critical elements. The primary aviation security legislation is the first critical element, and it talks about the foundation, the legal foundation under which you're operating, the primary legislation that supports your aviation security system. Critical element number 2 is aviation security programs and regulations. So it's secondary legislation, your national security program, all your other national programs, quality control, training, etc., that are going to say what you do in your state and how you're going to do it. Critical element number 3 is about assigning responsibility, state-appropriate authority for aviation security and its responsibilities. So what we want to make sure is that the responsibilities for all the elements in your aviation security system are established, whether you're talking about a national level or airport level, that we know who's doing what in your state, who's responsible for the different activities in aviation security in your state. Critical element number 4 is about training. So we're looking at personnel qualifications and training. Do your national level and airport level people have the skills they need to do what they do? Do you have the training programs to make sure that your national inspectors are qualified to do what they do? And do the people at the airport have the training that they need to do what they do? And when I say airport, I talk operationally, airlines, catering, cargo, you name it, all at the airport level. Critical element number 5 is about providing technical guidance, tools, and security critical information. You establish your policies in critical element number 2, but now what does that mean? How do we know what you're supposed to do operationally? Now, some states are far more prescriptive for many reasons. Other states are outcomes-based. We just want to know, what is the result that you're looking for? How do you measure it? How do you know that your objectives are being met? That's what we're looking under critical element number 5. Critical element number 6 is about certification and approval obligations. Essentially what we're looking at, there's 2 groups of people that need to be certified, instructors and screeners. However, all the operational programs need to be approved by the appropriate authority. So how do you make sure that operationally they know what they're doing? Whether it's outcomes-based or prescriptive, that's up to the state to decide how they're going to do it. We just want to make sure that you know what's supposed to be doing, and more importantly, that operationally they know what the outcome is supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing. Critical element number 7 is quality control obligations. As a national authority, you have to implement tests, inspections, audits to make sure that your system is working well. We want to make sure that that oversight system is comprehensive, that you're looking at all elements. So what we're looking at is to make sure that there are systems in place to make sure that all your aviation security requirements are being met. Finally, critical element number 8. What we're looking at here is, can you resolve a deficiency that was detected through your oversight system? And operationally, primarily Chapter 4 of Annex 17, are you actually implementing the preventative security measures adequately? How are you, in practice, implementing aviation security? How effective is your aviation security system? That's where you're going to get that information. So that's the first one. That's going to give you an overall average. And a lot of people don't understand, well, that global average for those critical elements in the middle doesn't make sense to me. Because all 8 critical elements are important for an oversight system, for a sustainability system, all 8 elements are considered equal and are just averaged out for that particular average. And that's how we calculate that number. But the issue is that we don't want to focus on that average, because behind all these numbers are all the recommendations on how we improve our systems. And for states and anybody looking to improve the systems, the real key focus that you should be looking at is the recommendations that support this graph, because that's how you're going to know what it is that you need to address in your system. Now we get to the new compliance indicator, measuring performance. One of the concerns in the past was the compliance indicator didn't really make a lot of sense. Nobody really understood how that correlated to Annex 17 and to the different components. The new compliance indicator, which will be published in the very near future for all states that have been audited under the CMA, is going to look a lot like what you see right now on your screens. This compliance indicator groups all the standards in subchapters of Annex 17 and puts them together, and only uses a grand total of 232 of the 497 protocol questions in order to determine. Only the questions that really address, is that standard being met, are used in order to calculate this graph. So what we're looking at is, not is it sustainable, we're looking at is, at the time of the audit, was this standard being met? That's the different question. Now, you might be meeting that standard, and it might be sustainable. That's great. But at this graph, what we're focused on is that standard being met at the time of the audit? And it is an indication, because it is a picture at 1 or 2 airports during the audit, during a specific week in the year when we went to visit you. So it's important to understand that it's an indication. It's not an absolute. More importantly, these graphs are comprised of all the standards in that subchapter. So it's not just one standard. It's up to 5 or 6, depending, or even 9 standards, depending on the subchapter that is being addressed. But the way we look at that is that this subchapter is being met by that percentage. One small little note, we see great numbers with 2 decimal points in this particular graph. We're going to be rounding it up to a single unit in the future, just to make it easier, because I don't think we're that worried about the decimals in levels of compliance at that point. So there's another element that we have in our program, because we want to make sure that there is rectification. And I remember I said that what's most important for everybody is to focus on the recommendations. Those 2 graphs I just showed you are about understanding how the system works and being able to understand where your strengths and weaknesses are. But to strengthen your system, we really need to focus on the recommendations. Significant security concerns, which I briefly mentioned earlier, is another item that we have. This means that there's an immediate risk to aviation security. There is no system in place to prevent an act of unlawful interference from happening in a specific area. These are operational security measures. They are related to operational. It's not about programs being in place or procedures being in place. It's about operationally, there's nothing to prevent an act of unlawful interference from happening. Currently, we have 20 significant security concerns in 7 states that are posted on the secure site. However, we should notice that there's a lot of potential significant security concerns that are identified during the audit process that are addressed immediately by the state during the audit and are resolved before the audit team leaves or within the 30 days following the audit. How do significant security concerns work? The team will identify the potential significant security concern during the audit. They will coordinate with our head office, with myself. I will coordinate with my team to do an initial review. If we think it's potentially a significant security concern, we will declare that to the state. During the 15 days following the audit, we will convene a validation committee, we will assess, and we will either confirm or not confirm that SSEC. If it is confirmed, the state is notified, and they have an additional 15 days, so 30 days total, to address, mitigate, or completely correct that concern. If they do that and provide us the evidence with some oversight reports to show that it's actually working correctly, we will validate that process, sometimes on site, and if it's all good, the validation committee will meet again, and the process stops there, nothing is published. If it's not addressed within 30 days, it is published on our secure site. Initially, just indicating that there is a significant security concern in a state. After another 60 days, it's published what audit area is being affected by that. So we have 4 components to improving the sustainability. As I said, the first one is the report, the actual measures. Then we also want to look at how the program assists the GASEP, how do we identify and prioritize assistance, and how do we help guide policy development. So the audit report gives you, as I said earlier, very clear findings, what went right and wrong, specifically what went wrong, and what are the things that you need to do to address those findings. From that, the state develops a corrective action plan to address those. That corrective action plan should be on a project management style. What are the steps that we need to follow to address this problem? And it might be 3 or 4 steps. It's not just, we'll fix it. We want to talk about what are the steps we're going to follow to fix those problems. The corrective action plan also helps identify priorities and manage continuous improvement, because it's your tracking sheet of what you need to do and how you're going to do it. So it really becomes a project management tool. That's what our hope is, and that's what states hopefully are using this to their advantage. The USAP-CMA also measures the progress in GASEP. The major targets, 80% of states will be over 65 by the end of 2020, 90% of states will be over 80% by the end of 2023, and 90% is the target for 2030. So what we're looking at is helping to measure the progress in meeting the GASEP targets. This also helps promote global aviation security at both the national, the regional, and the global level, because all regions have established their own targets. It also serves to identify the deficiencies and vulnerabilities associated risks. We're giving you prioritized recommendations with very high, medium, and low priority to help guide you on what you need to address immediately, what you need to address second, third, and last. This also allows you to help get assistance. When you're looking at getting assistance, you can prioritize what areas you're going to get assistance in. And it builds state-specific initiatives to increase implementation and strengthen sustainability. It gives you the map as to what it is that we need to address. How do we guide policy development? Well, the audit program looks at all states in a thorough manner. So we find what are the common challenges that are being faced by states and what are the operational areas of concern. We notice deficiencies in certain standards and associated guidance, or in understanding interpretation of standards. We know what areas are a challenge for states, and we provide that feedback back to the policy section in ICAO, which provides that feedback back to the different working groups of the Aviation Security Panel, so that those working groups that are working on guidance material, on standards, can get that information and understand in practical terms how things are being interpreted, how people understand, and how things are being maybe even misinterpreted or misunderstood. We can also identify recurrent vulnerabilities and risks where policy could be updated. So if there's an area that there's a gap, that we find a gap in the standards, we also provide that feedback back to the policy section, who provides that to the Aviation Security Panel and its working groups in order to try to feed the system and get information back to those that can make a difference and change the policies and the standards that we have to apply. In summary, the Aviation Security Audit Program continuous monitoring approach is key to continuous improvement in aviation security and the sustainability of the state, regional, and global level of aviation security. What we're trying to do is make sure that all the tools are in place so that states themselves, through their detailed audit report, know what to improve, but everybody else, through the 2 graphs that we post, can clearly understand what are the strengths and weaknesses of the states that have been audited, both at an individual state level, regional, and global level. With that, I open the floor to any questions that anybody may have and welcome any clarifications that you may want. So, anything? Anybody?
John, if you have any questions, please step up to the mic. Well, thank you, Juan.
Thank you. Well, if there's no questions, I'll be in the back of the room at the end. I'd like to thank you for coming and those that are online.